Welcome to the digital airways of Storyophonic. We're proud to introduce you to the members of a very special community. Those in the spotlight and behind the scenes, the people and the personalities who make the music happen. I'm Dan Kimpel. We're proud to continue with our mission to entertain and inform you as we reveal tips and tales from deep inside the music industry. With a career arc testifying to her talent and tenacity, Jett Galindo is a Grammy-winning mastering engineer and vinyl cutter with a sterling resume of noteworthy projects with artists from Barbra Streisand to Green Day. She joins with a growing community of brilliant women, LGBTQ+ professionals, advocates, and pivotal organizations on the leading edge as the recording industry evolves into an unprecedented era of inclusivity. You'll hear all about this as Storyophonic presents Jett Galindo. Well, we're honored to have you with us today, Jett. It's great that you can make it. And we've had some people I know you've worked with or you know. Lynn Earls has been here with us. Leslie Ann Jones, Emerson Mancini, a lot of folks. So we welcome you.
It's a huge honor. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you, Kim. And just to be in the company of the names you just mentioned, it's an honor. Humbled coming from the Philippines and to be sharing my story in Storyophonic is an honor. Thank you.
Well, great. Your story is fascinating. For listeners who might not have the knowledge of what you do, is it possible, can you just give us a little overview, especially about mastering?
Sure. Music mastering, in a nutshell, it's the final stage of the music production process where all of the final quality check and even a lot of creative decisions are made before something gets distributed to commercial streaming platforms so that consumers can listen to the music in various formats or playback systems. It's our job to make sure that whatever the artist, producer, mixer has worked so hard on gets experienced and translated to all these different playback systems and formats. So a lot of technical challenges, but there's a lot of room for creative decisions. And our focus is to not change the music that everyone's worked so hard on. It's really about doing the little necessary tweaks, enhancements, in order to make sure that whoever is your audience gets to hear the music the way you intend it to be. So I hope that helps explain what mastering is. It's really fun and fulfilling. It goes quite fast compared to the other stages of the production process. So that comes with its own unique set of challenges.
Right. Because of that, your resume can just be immense with the amount of projects you've worked on.
Exactly. For mastering, it is unique.
Yeah.
And you just mentioned Emerson earlier, and he has this amazing body of work. And that is quite typical for mastering engineers. And like I said, it introduces a unique set of challenges. And that's one of the things I like to talk to young engineers who aspire to explore this path for themselves. It's very fulfilling because for someone who's a music lover, you get this privilege of working with a wide range of genres. And for me, it's an honor that I get to work with amazing talents. And as a mastering engineer, it ends up you building a Rolodex of all these amazing creators and engineers and producers. And it's really a humbling experience to be at that endpoint, to make sure that they've entrusted their amazing music to you. And to have that privilege of doing that last step is such a privilege, and I never take that for granted.
I did an intro and we talk about the range of projects that you've done, which is, as you indicate, allows you to dip into many different genres and put your mark on that. So I think that that's very inspiring. And
it is. And it's so fun. In the morning, you could be working on hip hop, let's say, for example, and then in the afternoon, it could be an EP of a jazz duo of cello and accordion. and at night it's video game music. And that's exactly what's happened just recently. And that's just a normal day in the studio. And yeah, it's really exciting. It doesn't get dull. And in our studio, there are just 2 rooms, digital mastering, and we also cut vinyl records. And even that just makes our life as mastering engineers exciting.
Wow. So you're on the Sony lot, is that correct?
Correct.
Oh, that must be inspiring in itself.
Yeah, our building, it literally has a giant rainbow outside. So it's pretty easy to invite guests and just tell them, just look for the giant rainbow. And we mean it, literal rainbow. So I work at the bakery along with my colleagues, Eric Boulanger, Peter Hewitt Dutton, our assistant Willow Edge, and our manager James Carino. And there's so much fulfillment to being surrounded by fellow creatives. And that was a deliberate choice for Eric to start the studio in Sony Picture Slot, where you're surrounded by creatives, and for me to be surrounded by my colleagues who are just like-minded in mastering. It's very fun. So,
well, the other way you identify yourself also is as a vinyl cutter.
Yes.
So can you tell us a little bit about what that entails?
Vinyl is such a different experience compared to digital mastering because it's such a tactile format, and that's why I'm a huge proponent of promoting just physical formats in general, because nowadays with the not even growing popularity, it's really the ubiquitous mode of enjoying music at this point, streaming, and just listening to music in digital format. Because of streaming, there's less possibilities of listeners to own music. Even if you pay for premium streaming, you don't own the music. The music can go away. So with the growing music discography that's available to you, physical formats are the way to own music. And with vinyl, because of the format being such an old format, and there's a reason why there hasn't been a lot of innovation in the format. It's decades old, probably almost 100 years old. Almost. I actually wrote an article about the history of the vinyl format for Isotope. So if you look up Jett Galindo, vinyl, I've written a lot of articles about vinyl on the Isotope Learn portal. And yeah, it's just such an old format. And the challenge of using modern technologies and fitting it on this archaic format, it comes with a lot of challenges. So, yeah, that's why vinyl cutters are a superstitious bunch. We always knock on wood. We always do weird rituals just to make sure we know that it's gonna sound amazing on the vinyl record. There's a lot of delicate things to make sure that the music syncs on the vinyl format. And if you really care about music, you go through that work. But there's also a lot of opportunities to cut corners in terms of putting music on the vinyl format. And that's why, as I mentioned, I'm a huge advocate of just educating the listeners and even the independent community when it comes to releasing their music on vinyl. And I'm actually one of the board members of this nonprofit called Women in Vinyl. And what Women in Vinyl does is really just promoting the education of all the different facets of the vinyl manufacturing process and all the job opportunities that are out there, just making the vinyl community more open and engaging and inviting to all music listeners and music lovers out there. So I highly recommend womeninvinyl.com. But yeah, in a nutshell, that's vinyl in my life.
One of the questions that I would have about mastering is, who is engaged in dialogue in that final process? Is it as an artist, do they take a role in that? Do producers take a role? Do labels take a role? Or does nobody take a role? Is it all up to you? How does that work?
That's a good question. And no one has really asked that question for me in the podcast. And I really appreciate it, because there's not one set procedure in terms of that. Sometimes our main contact would be the artist. Sometimes it's the mixer that brings in the work to us, because the mixer would love how us as mastering engineers master their mixes. And with them having a say on which mastering engineer gets to work on their mixes, we get a lot of work coming in from the actual mix engineers. There are times when it's the actual label that reaches out to us, the producers, and in a way, the communication is different. And sometimes, another certain situation would be that everyone would be involved. And it's up to me as a mastering engineer to make sure to set terms, set boundaries, and to remind everyone that there's a tendency to end up having many cooks in the kitchen. So I would appreciate having one point person, and that point person be the representative of. A good example of this is the Berkeley Indian Ensemble, which was nominated for Best Global Music Album last year at the Grammys. And it's an album that comprised of 98 musicians. And we were on a time crunch. My point person was the main music director, but she also brought in with her all the different like producers, arrangers, because it's like music that featured, again, 98 people throughout like a span of like 5 years of the Berkeley Indian Ensemble's like music repertoire. So it's up to me as a mastering engineer, because of my experience, to guide the ensemble, the artists, the producers, engineers, to make it efficient with the limited time that we had in order to get to the final destination. And it's really fulfilling because it was their first nomination. They're a college ensemble. And that is one project that I felt really challenged everyone. And yeah, it's cool. But yeah, to go back to your question, it's up to us mastering engineers to adapt our communication style based on who we're speaking with. We could either be in technical jargons and go deeper with the numbers and the technicalities when we speak with the mixer. But it's also important that we communicate with the producer or artist in a way that really focuses on the creativity. One good example is that some artists and producers would find it more effective to communicate in terms of like very abstract notes. For example, I had one producer, one of my favorites, but this producer asked that he wants the master to sound like the music is like a 70s pool party. And like, oh my God, I get it. Yeah, and then I had another Japanese producer want the album to sound smoky. And then I had another artist that gave me like a paragraph of like, imagine yourself walking outside with the rain like just falling on you. In a way, those abstract notes actually can sometimes speak more to the music, to the experience. It's up to us to make sure that the final master reflects that. It's fun.
Nobody's ever told me that before, Jett.
That happens a lot.
That is fabulous. Wow.
I welcome those. I love those notes.
You made it through award season, okay, right? Yeah, I know.
The first quarter of the year is always heavy on the awards and networking.
Yes.
But it's also like the time when you get to reconnect with so many of your peers, and many of them are flying in, traveling to LA. So it's kind of like a reunion every year. So it's fun.
It's great. And you were nominated for Best Contemporary Blues Album for Ruthie Foster.
Ruthie Foster.
Who really went for a more of a blues soul kind of thing than I think of her doing. I usually think of her as in the more Americana bag. But I listened to the record. I like the Soul Searching. I like the title cut. Can You Lie Your Way to the Truth is one of the tracks that really stood out to me.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's produced by Daniel Barrett and mixed by Brian Cook. And that was a very pleasant mastering experience because this is a project that was brought in by the mixer, Brian Cook. And Daniel Barrett was also just a very supportive and open-minded producer to work with. And they essentially gave me the freedom to just do my thing. And knowing the sound of Brian Cook, having worked with him before, it helps me to already have a good idea of what the final master should sound like. I also try to listen to the artist's previous works. And yeah, that really helps me determine the path that I take with mastering. So yeah, Healing Time, the album was so fun, and it's a very like rock and roll celebratory blues album.
Great.
Yeah.
I listened to a Latin children's album that you worked on called Vamos al Zoo.
That's awesome. I'm glad you listened to it.
Danielo and Chapis, and there was a song that I really liked called El Baile del Sapito, the dance of the toad. I visited bars like that in my youth. But I enjoyed the fact that, that was a whole other thing, so like...
Exactly. Again, that goes back to how the body of work that I get to work on is just so diverse. And this is a Latin children's album. And in fact, Danilo E. Chapis won the recent Latin Grammy for Best Children's Album. And I had the honor of working with Cristina Abaroa and Alejandro Abaroa, mixed by Bruce Sugar. And I knew when working on this album that it was going to win. Just the theme of the album is so simple, but also just so inviting. Vamos al Zoo means let's go to the zoo. It really made me want to go to San Diego Zoo. The songs are about like the unique animals that are there, the penguin with the red boots. It just gave me so much joy working on that record.
We're from the Philippines.
Yes.
And I know your family was involved in the music business, training and managing cover bands. And
Yes.
I know the cover band theme runs through a lot of Filipino. When I travel in Asia,
I love
I see
you've witnessed this yourself, because that's very accurate.
I see the bands, and it's like, and when I lived in New York City, I knew a lot of Filipino musicians, and one of the things that really, obviously, try not to stereotype people, but I mean, there's a musical facility there, which is just astonishing. And sometimes it was the variety of instruments that one musician could play.
That's true. I guess, again, going back to the stereotype that it's like Asian children are just, it's like we're all expected to learn the piano. So I took piano lessons. My sisters took piano lessons, voice lessons. My sister took drum lessons. But going back to just Filipino passion for music, again, going back to stereotypes, but this one is quite real. Every household will have a karaoke machine. Our family has a karaoke machine. Yes. And Filipino get-togethers is not complete without someone belting out like a classic pop song. With the karaoke machine. It's something that Filipinos have always taken pride on. And even in the diaspora of Filipinos outside of mainland Philippines, for example, Filipino Americans, even that passion for music continues. And Filipinos take so much pride in whenever there's an artist that has a Filipino background. And my boyfriend always likes to joke that every Filipino knows if the celebrity is like Filipino or part Filipino. And Bruno Mars, Saweetie, her, Olivia Rodrigo, just to name a few. Yes. And music is just such an integral part of just the Filipino upbringing. And to add to that, my family is quite unconventional too. My family's bread and butter, since the day I was born in 1984, has been managing and teaching cover bands. And that was really something that shaped my upbringing, because I just grew up learning the most like recent pop music of that time. Our idea of like family time is just watching the music videos of the Bangles. When I was a kid, we would just listen to the Beatles just over and over on our road trips. And just pop music for me was something that was immersed in me growing up. And in a way, my idea of rebellion when I got into grade school and high school was to pursue classical music.
Yes.
So I've always had this duality of pop music and classical music. I became a touring professional classical musician as part of a choral ensemble. We've toured Europe, Asia, the US. Even choral music is such big part of the Filipino experience. And the few occasions that I ever get out of the mastering mastering seat. It's what I call my hobby, is engineering, recording, mixing, and mastering choral music. It's something that's so ingrained in me, and that's the duality that I've always lived with, is classical and pop music.
It's very different. I've listened to you. I've listened to your tracks of you singing, and you're oh yeah, of course.
It's been a while.
You're astonishingly good.
Thank you.
A lot of sometimes people will come into the technical thing, like Emerson, for instance, told us, said, well, I was Berklee College of Music and
We're both Berklee.
Exactly, but didn't work out on that side, but it worked out on this side. Rarely does somebody have the musical facility that you have and the ability to follow those dual paths. I think that's really interesting.
I mean, it's something that I still navigate to this day, because at the end of the day, I am very fortunate that my main job is still music. And as a way for me to escape the pressures of the day-to-day work is still music. In fact, just this weekend, I actually flew to San Francisco for my friend, who's a music director for a church, to sing O Sacrum Convivium, choral music for Easter Vigil. I'm just very fortunate that I'm able to go back to my choral music as a way to just take a break from the challenges of my day job, which is something that I'm also very passionate about. I feel that I'm more complete making sure that both parts of me continue to be a part of me. So I'm very grateful that I get to do both.
I would just imagine that gives you an ear sense
Oh.
that really would help
100%.
No matter what you were doing.
A lot of the veteran mastering engineers that I look up to, my mentor, Doug Sachs, Bob Ludwig, my mentor in Berklee College of Music, Jonathan Weiner, all come from classical backgrounds. One thing that classical music brings to the world of mastering is nuance.
Yeah.
Not to say that not having that classical background makes you less nuanced of a mastering engineer, but it has personally helped me, because there's so much very subtle differences that is crucial to the classical performance, classical interpretation, that really lends itself to the limited world where mastering engineers work in, compared to mixers or recording engineers, where a typical level adjustment would be 3 dB, 5 dB. A lot of our adjustments is on a frequency band that's just half a dB. And that makes a huge difference. That restraint is what gives mastering the biggest impact in the final sound. And going beyond that restraint is actually the thing that kind of collapses the masters. And many times producers, engineers, labels seek out the top mastering engineers because of this nuanced restraint approach to mastering. And the classical experience, the experience of living in this world of classical music really lends itself to that challenge.
We'll be right back after this. This season of Storyophonic is sponsored by Novation, creators of the iconic Launchpad and Launch Key MIDI controllers. Novation's creative instruments allow you to translate ideas into reality, channeling your artistic energy to create new music. Novation seeks to inspire. Visit novationmusic.com. So your experience with Berklee College of Music, I mean, with a focus on musicality, a lot of jazz people come out of there, a lot of different kinds of music. Was the community there must be amazing.
Oh gosh, and I still credit Berklee. Even my achievements to this day go back to the time I spent in Berklee. I was in Berklee College of Music from 2009 to 2012. And one of the things that I just loved so much about my time in Berklee College of Music, it feels like a bubble where you're just surrounded by so many brilliant, talented, passionate genius of a musician from different parts of the world. And as an engineer, so I'm an engineer through and through. I'm not a producer. I know I'm not. I'm not a songwriter. Definitely not. I just love engineering and working with these amazing creators. And just to be surrounded by all of this talent and creativity is just such a gift for an engineer like me. I always say, even to this day, that when people say that I have a cool job or that or that my life is cool, I'm not. I'm just a hermit that stays in a cave that just lives vicariously through the amazing music created by the clients I collaborate with, and that reflects back to my time in Berklee College of Music. I had the privilege of working with the Berklee Indian Ensemble. I sang with the Berklee Video Game Choir. I got to meet the Classical Guitar Ensemble. There's a Dream Theater Ensemble. I was fortunate enough to be in the very first class of the Flamenco Recording Techniques class. One of the cool things being an engineering student is that you have the keys to the recording studios. And that the musicians will let's work together. And I just thrived on that. I would book studio sessions until 6 a.m. because that is my biggest joy, to just create and serve artists in order to make their music. It's something that still inspires me to this day. The one thing that I carry with me to this day still is the discography, the portfolio of work that I've built from Berklee College of Music from those days. And one of the advice that I always tell aspiring musicians and engineers right now is never take their school experience for granted. You're going to be surrounded by your peers who are going to be growing in the music industry the same time as you. And while you're in your own lane, slowly, gradually going through all the challenges and growing, they're growing at the same time as you. And you guys are going to be needing each other. And even to this day, it's like many of my peers from over 10 years ago are people that I still get to work with today and are now Grammy winners themselves. Alvin Wee, who's the mixing engineer of Encanto. My good friend, Jacqueline Sanchez, Jackie Boom, who was nominated and won Album of the Year for her engineering work on John Batiste's album, which was mastered by Emerson, by the way. And the same year, she was nominated for her engineering work for her album for Album of the Year. I'm just surrounded by amazing people, and I live vicariously through these people. I'm just humbled and honored that I get to master their music.
I love that information, Jett, because because I come from a music education background as well. And the one thing that I would always emphasize was don't look up, look around.
Exactly.
The next person that's going to because you're looking up and that's a fantasy. You look around you and see who you can access in this moment, and they will rise and you will rise.
I'll remember that anytime I talk to students, because don't look up, look around you, and especially you as an educator from Liverpool, from that amazing school. Again, it might be a small school, but it's rich in talent and rich in passion. And I had the fortune of just recognizing that amazing talent surrounding me and treasuring that even to this day.
I would say that that's a reflection of your awareness. And I think your awareness cuts through to a lot of different things that you do. And
I hope so.
And I think objectivity as well is probably I would.
And I guess the passion just really drives a lot of that.
Yeah.
I'm just fans of the people I work with. I never take the privilege of working with all these people. I never take it for granted.
That's great. I live in a neighborhood which is heavily Filipino.
Where?
Eagle Rock.
Oh, yes, Eagle Rock. So many amazing Filipino food there.
There is. And we have a seafood city where we can go shop
I am jealous.
For lumpia.
I hate you.
I make a mean adobo, too.
No way.
Yes, I do. And I've been to those parties with the
those are
karaoke
real.
machine. In fact, I think they're still going on.
Dude, those are real. Like, no, those Filipino hangs, like, you always have to bring Tupperware with you. Or they would have, like, a stack of Tupperware ready.
Yes.
Like, take this with you. Yeah.
Yes, yes. So I appreciate all of those things. So you also work with movie soundtracks as well. So now that's a different nature of what the function of the music is. Obviously, it's there to tell the story, which we're seeing.
Oh, gosh,
right?
yes.
So what does that involve in terms of mastering?
I'm glad you asked because that's true. It's like movie soundtracks, again, I'm the cool thing about mastering is that you get to work in a wide range of music and they all have their own unique challenges and exciting qualities. And what I love about soundtracks is just the storytelling aspect. You kind of like know the story just from mastering the music. And in fact, the very first time I cried while mastering is mastering an animated children's show for Netflix called Centaur World. And the musicians for that soundtrack are Broadway greats. And it's like a comedy cartoon, but there's a lot of like just deep messages, deep stories of just longingness and finding your people. And the performance of these Broadway actors in a soundtrack context was just so moving to me. And then the cool thing about soundtracks is the story is what drives the music. So the range of styles can be really drastically different. Like when we mastered the Blade Runner 2049 soundtrack, distortions and wild electronic effects that are you can hear a lot of like rule breaking in the soundtrack, and you have to be respectful of those rule breaking, and you make sure that those translate in the final masters. You think outside the box a lot with mastering soundtracks. For me, I get a lot of joy in mastering video game soundtracks. I take pride in the fact that I think I master a lot of video game soundtracks than the typical mastering engineer. I'm a video game nerd myself, so I think that helps me like attract video game composers. And I recently mastered the soundtrack for Minecraft and the recent Avatar video game that came out. Yeah, again, the story is the important part of the mastering process. And yeah, I tend to get moved sometimes too much when mastering those. It's really cool.
Well, it makes sense if that's a part of the culture you grew up around, that medium, then you would embrace that, obviously.
Exactly.
So you wouldn't get that from a 60-year-old dude. Well, maybe you would. I don't know.
Oh, no, like a lot. You'd be surprised by the amount of emotion from like the most unexpected project.
Yeah.
Again, it doesn't get dull in mastering.
I lived in New York City at a certain period of my life, and
me too.
When I was living there, there you go. I saw you lived in New York. I think I was there a little earlier, Jett.
And probably longer.
It was 5 years, but it felt longer. But anyhow, at the time I was there, I had a friend named Trudy Schroeder, and she worked at Media Sound Studios. And she is at that time, one of the first ever recording engineers of the female persuasion. And it got a lot of attention at the time. Billboard did a story on her, and Trudy's not really a show business personality. She's more like a very kind of an insular person. And it was kind of like a big deal that she had broken through this perceived ceiling to do what she did. But it was a very slow process after. It didn't seem like that entered an onslaught of women now entering that field. However, now we do detect and we know, and I saw you moderating a panel talking about this, and someone made the point of, we're already here. Now it's just telling people that we're here. And it's so great to see women taking that position.
Thank you. I'm glad you brought that up too. And I think it stems from more leadership from women. The current president of the Recording Academy is Julia Michaels, and the vice president is Lynn Earls. And Lynn, from just my personal experience, has been such a staunch advocate of visibility and representation, because I think the fact of the matter is women have been behind the board for decades. And I want to give a shout out to all the women that I've looked up to when I was just starting out. Carrie Keys, who's the longtime live sound engineer of Pearl Jam, and she's the founder of Sound Girls. Darcy Proper, who's like one of the most awarded mastering engineers for her work in immersive mastering. She's someone I've always looked up to as a mastering engineer. Again, Emily Lazar, who's done a lot of amazing work and created We Are Moving the Needle. These women, I think, realize that they're all out there. They're still outnumbered by men. There's not a lot of like immediate support of like-minded folks, because you're just surrounded by men, even though there's a lot of us women out there. And for folks like Emily Lazar and Carrie Keys and all the amazing veterans and the pioneers, them starting communities and nonprofit organizations that just make it so much easier for women professionals and also aspiring women and LGBTQ plus folks wanting to pursue a career in production and engineering in the music industry, to make it easier for us to be connected is so powerful. And for example, when I was just starting out, like over 10 years ago, Carrie Keys, the live sound engineer of Pearl Jam, started Sound Girls. And it's through Sound Girls that I got to meet all these amazing fellow mastering engineers who happen to be women. And for a while, I thought I was the only one. But then I met Piper Payne, I met Katie Tavini, I met Heba Kadri, Maggie Luther, Amy Dragon. For me, I just get a lot of inspiration from just getting to know these amazing mastering engineers. And it's such a niche field. But the fact of the matter is, women are out there and are doing amazing work. And it's through these organizations that has helped us connect with each other and just be a support to each other. So yeah, I have to give a shout out to all these organizations. Besides Sound Girls and We Are Moving the Needle, there's also She Is the Music, Women in Vinyl, Gender Amplified. There's many. A Women's Audio Mission, of course. So yeah, it's because of these organizations that it makes it feel less lonely for a young woman to pursue this field.
Yeah, I worked a lot with AAPI artists coming up,
awesome.
and a lot of them weren't drawn into some place where they didn't see themselves represented.
100%.
Right? You know, so why would you want to get into a business where you don't see yourself represented? So, with what you're doing with the women and with advocacy of that is really interesting.
Especially for producers and songwriters, me being a woman or me being Filipino, I bring in a unique perspective, and it's important to hear the stories that come from those backgrounds, and for the audience to listen to music that speaks to their unique experience. It's good for business. And in fact, there's this misconception that I like to talk about where there's very few seats on the table for minorities. And in a way, because of that perceived lack of opportunities, lack of like chairs at the table, what ends up happening is that the minorities end up being pitted against each other,
Sure.
or we end up being more like protective rather than embracing the addition of more of us. And what has helped me, because of like meeting all these amazing women who are doing the same thing as I have, it helps the music industry to bring more unique perspectives into the music industry, because it drives more business in. Like just having BTS, K-pop, the audience is just so massive, and it's tapped an audience that has never been reached by the music industry before. And example for the bakery, for our studio, my work as a mastering engineer, a lot of my work comes from countries that has never really had access to a professional mastering engineer before. I get a lot of work from Philippines, from Latin American countries, from Europe, Southeast Asia. Like, there is such a huge market out there. And if it's by opening opportunities to more minorities that we really, I think it's just great for everyone. It's a win-win.
It's great you talk about that worldwide market because, sometimes we can be a little myopic because we live in Los Angeles sometimes. But of course, living here is an interesting thing. As you said, you don't necessarily need to travel the world to work internationally because people
That's
here.
true.
They want the technology that they're going to get here.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's always a terrific advantage. And plus, we live in a city which is just
We're like
outrageously diverse.
The resources in LA is amazing, and the fact is, it's like it's true that a lot of things can be done virtually. A lot of engineering and productions are done remotely, but just the amazing number of studios and session musicians and engineers, producers that are based here in LA. There's a reason why we're here. Both of us are here in LA. It's just an amazing music community, and we continue to serve like the bigger audience, which is global. And our studio has been busy with a lot of international projects, and a lot of these international clients want to send their work to an LA-based mastering studio, and they get a lot of good quality work from it. And I get to serve a customer base that hasn't been given that resources before. Again, win-win.
We'll be right back after this. This season of Storyophonic is sponsored by Isotope, making innovative products that inspire and enable people to be creative using AI-powered tools for mixing, mastering, audio repair, and more. Visit isotope.com. You are very visible in our community. We get to see you, and because of your advocacy of these things. And what do you say to your 10-year-old self?
When I was 10 in the Philippines, gosh, I never probably would have imagined that I would be here, like sitting here doing what I'm doing. I've mentioned this before in other podcast interviews, but my parents didn't really want me pursuing music. Because they're musicians themselves, and they understand the risks and the sacrifice. But at the end of the day, I do not see myself doing anything else. My hobby is still music, classical music. And it was inevitable for me to end up here. But for a 10-year-old, I remember back then, I just, on my grade school yearbook, it just said that I wanted to be either a pilot or surgeon. So if my 10-year-old self finds out that she's now a mastering engineer and vinyl cutter here in Los Angeles, doing this interview with you, Dan, and Storyophonic, and having worked with like Elvis Costello, Barbra Streisand, my 10-year-old self would be like, that's insane, but hell yeah. Like, she would have been like, okay. I'll probably ask her to calm down, focus, and keep on going, because the path is rocky, but just focus. Hang in there. You won't be a pilot, but what you'd be doing is cooler. Yeah.
Jett Galindo, you are a force of nature. We really appreciate you being our guest.
Oh, it's an honor. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Storyophonic. Our shows are recorded, produced, and mixed by Lindsay Tomasic. Kim Strand is our production director. Our theme song is by Daddle Light Mine. Give us a review on your favorite listening platform. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Special thanks to our season sponsors, Isotope and Novation. I'm Dan Kimpel on Storyophonic.